Welcome, bent riders around the world. My name is Gary Solomon, and you're watching the Laid Back Bike Report. So happy to have you all with us today, guys. Let me tell you what's coming up on the show. We're going to kick it off with Honza and Recumbent news. Honza worked very hard to put together a segment for us today, and we're anxious to share that with you. Along with that news report, I'll have a short few sentences to say about the status of the Phoenix Bike Works, or formerly known as RANS. We're going to give you an update on that. Then we're going to go back to merry old England and our pal Barney Harle, and he's going to share his experience with Icarus Cup, the human-powered flight competition that takes place there. He had a great time and learned a lot and shared most of all his excitement with that. So look forward to sharing that with you guys. And then we're going to get into the main segment, which is all about off-road bent riding. So I have interviewed a couple of major players in the off-road bent riding world. One guy that builds them, designs them, and rides them. And another guy who rides really elite off-road recumbent bikes, and even competes in off-roading in a mountain biking kind of scenario. So we look forward to talking with those guys. And finally, we're going to have a review of the Trident Trikes Half Pint, the kids' trike that Tom Flohr has put together. I actually enlisted my grandchildren to try it out and give their impressions of the ride and all that goes with it. So I hope you'll enjoy that as much as I enjoyed making that with them. So with that, let's first of all meet our crew today, see who's helping me out. And there we go. There's three guys I couldn't do without. So Larry Seidman in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Thanks, Larry, for being with us and doing the directing today.
Hi, Gary. Glad to help.
And Trey Burgoyne in Raymond, Mississippi, with a RANS bike in the background, which will come into play a little bit later. Trey, thanks for being with us.
Glad to be here.
And from the Czech Republic, the ever-busy, non-stop working Honza Gala. Honza, thanks for everything you do for us, and I'm glad you're with us today.
I'm glad to be here with you.
All right, super. All right, guys, so if you want to really participate in today's show, you can do so in the live chat, either on Facebook or on YouTube. If you make your comments in the comment sections of either of those, you can ask your questions, you can make comments, and please let us know where you are watching from. We always like to hear about that. And if you'd like to support the Laid Back Bike Report, how can you do that? Well, you can like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and click that little white eye up there. It'll take you to our webpage, laidbackbikereport.com, where you can find lots more information on past shows, what's coming up. You can buy a hat, and you can become a Patreon sponsor, which we always appreciate, just like all these fellas and ladies right here. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. So great. Let me tell you about the amazing sponsors of the Laid Back Bike Report. We appreciate each and every one of those, starting with TerraCycle, makers of exquisite recumbent parts and accessories for your bent. Don't just trike, adventure trike. TerraCycle's racks and bags are like having a personal Sherpa, but without the questionable ethics. And Trailside Trikes, a fine recumbent trike shop on the Withlacoochee Trail in Florida. And TerraTrike Greenspeed. Your vision, whatever it is, TerraTrike has a trike to take you there. And Greenspeed cutting-edge designs create performance through Aussie ingenuity. And Laid Back Cycles, the top USA dealer for Trike and the premier source for cat trike, ice, and green speed. We give you the freedom to ride. And Bicycle Man, where you can find new and used recumbent trikes and bikes. We're located in Alfred Station, New York, and have over 100 bents in stock and ready to try. So why wait? Come ride, then decide. And Azub. They are a 3-time winner of the Trike of the Year award and have brought several unique technological solutions to the world of recumbent bikes. For example, titanium front suspension on the Fly Trikes. Combined with tuned rear suspension, it provides its owner with absolute comfort throughout the ride. And Recumbent PDX. With a 150 trike inventory, Recumbent PDX is the West Coast's only cat trike megastore. We have over 20 trikes on our showroom floor just waiting for you to test ride through our beautiful Portland neighborhood. Call or email to schedule your test ride today. And Connecticut Yankee Peddler. We feature multiple brands of trikes, including electric assist models. Test rides and Southern Iowa hospitality are always available at our megastore in Chariton. All right, guys, let's jump into it with Honza Gala and that news segment. Honza is going to tell us about a number of recent developments, so let's jump into it now.
Hi guys, Honza Gala here from Recumbent.news. It has been quite some time since I had my last proper report, so there are a few more items I would like to cover this time. First of all, it is the cruise bike podcast. You know, there are not so many recumbent podcasts out there that you can find on podcast apps like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Basically, at the end, it has been only the Laidback Bike report in its audio version, but we do have an addition. Cruise bike founders Jim Parker and Maria Parker started a new one, a cruise bike podcast. There are 2 episodes that you can listen to on Spotify, or you can watch them on YouTube. I hope there will be more of them coming, as this is quite a popular form of getting the information. The 2 episodes are about the cruise bike origin. So the company started in 2005, and Jim and Maria talk about how it all happened. And the second one is about the history of recumbents and the history of recumbent industry. So this one is also interesting. The next thing is that Hezi Bikes unveiled their new version, a new evolution of the Catweasel Delta Trike. Catweasel is it's almost a synonym for Delta Trikes. It's for sure the most popular out there. It has been around for years, basically 30 years, because Marek Heze started the company with this one model, if I'm not mistaken. And there have been several, modifications, evolutions, and so forth. But this one is really major. It brings a completely new style of the frame, new concept with full suspension. Also, the rear wheels are suspended MacPherson style of suspension. So it is really interesting. So yeah, that's the new Catweasel 1. And I have the information that you should be able to see it at the CycleCon next month. So this would be big news there. Another very interesting news coming from the recumbent world or recumbent industry is the new Veltop canopy. if you don't know Veltop is a French company producing, roofs for recumbent trikes. And they have introduced a new Veltop Power Ride, which is a version of the canopy that is able to accommodate a solar panel on top of it. So it has some special size, it has special polstering of the roof, there are velcros on top so you can attach the solar panel to it, and it is kind of more solid structurally. I have to say that it is just the structure, just the Veltop canopy. There is no solar panel, no other parts for converting your trike into a solar bike. It is just the roof basically and all the things around it. If you want to know more, find a Veltop on internet, or you can go to recumbent.news and find an article about it. There, from my point of view, it makes building the recumbent solar bike way easier than it was before. Another interesting thing is coming from Scotland, from Glasgow. There is a company called Kinetics run by Ben Cooper, and he is developing a kit that converts the Brompton into a folding recumbent bike. It is the moving bottom bracket style, front wheel drive, very interesting, very compact one. There was a lady, Julian Neuss in Germany, or there is still, but she was producing a similar kit from Brompton years ago, but that was a rear wheel drive, way bigger. So this is a new attempt and I really like it. And finally, I have to mention the World Championship of Human Powered Vehicles that has just finished several hours ago in the UK, in Kent, which is the southeast corner of Great Britain, near the Dover port. As I said, the race is finished a few hours ago, so we don't have more than a couple of photos from Alan, the organizer, the main organizer, and some videos as well. And I will definitely cover it by myself in the Recumbent news, and we may cover it sooner or later in the Laid Back Bike report as well. But next Laid Back Bike report will cover the CycleCon. So take this as an invitation to the CycleCon show. As I already mentioned with Hezi Bikes, that they will have the new Catweasel 1 there. I believe there will be few more other new stuff, but you will be able to see, if you come, you will be able to see a lot of current recumbent bikes and trikes. You will be able to test ride them. You will be able to join seminars and clinics, and you will be able to join the rides because Xenia in Ohio is a great hub of cycle trails. So see you there and enjoy the rest of the Laid Back Bike report. Bye.
All right. So let's do this. Thank you, Honza. That was great. Let's bring Honza. Yeah, Honza. Thanks. That was a great report. And it's important to reiterate how big a deal CycleCon is. I luckily have to just go down the road. You have to travel a little further. You travel all the time, so it never stops for you. But can't wait to see you guys there. Maybe something that I didn't hear you say and people should be aware of is there's lots of test track riding, including an off-road test track that Stein Trikes has. And that kind of has a connection to what we're going to be talking about at the show a little bit later. But lots of opportunities for you guys to ride your favorite trikes and bikes. So get to Xenia if you can. It's not too late. Check the website out. And yeah, we would love, both Honza and I'm sure would love to see you guys there. We'll have our usual booth, and we hope you will stop by and say hi. And Trey and I will be traipsing all up and down the floor, getting interviews for our videos. So CycleCon is great. Anything, Honza, you wanted to add? That was pretty fresh, so I'm not sure you had much anything else.
Oh, no. Just, you tell that I'm traveling all the time, but I wish I would be at the World Championship or just getting back home from there, but I couldn't or I can't. So that's a pity this time after 2 years being there.
Right. And it's been a while for me as well. It was a great time when I was there. It's a unique spectacle. So we hope to hear more, like you say, on recumbent.news, and we may have some interviews as time goes on as well from some of the participants. So with that, Honza, thank you. And I am going to go on to talk about a little bit more news. There have been recent postings online concerning the status of Phoenix Bike Works, formerly known as RANS. So I reached out to Gerald Nickel, and he and Kara Nickel are the owners. And he was kind enough to call me last night to give me the straight story about what's going on, so I can relay that to you guys so you know exactly what the story is. So the things I've seen online were that they're having trouble, that in fact maybe they're even closing the business. So here's what Gerald told me. These are very difficult times for Phoenix Bike Works, as they are for many other small bike manufacturers in the U.S. His problems can be broken down into two categories, he says: financial and employees or help. Now, for financial, the competition from Asian manufacturers is making building bike frames here really unprofitable. So it makes a very difficult business proposition for them. And at the same time, his shop is working, doing other things, local contracts and such, and he can make some money doing that. So it kind of shifts his emphasis. Now, the other problem with employees or help revolves around his family, because it is a family operation, and he had hoped that his boys would continue to work at the shop and maybe even eventually take it over. But as so often happens with kids, they have other ideas, and he totally understands that. So the boys are wanting to maybe do some other things. So the long-term forecast for what might be with Phoenix Bike Works is uncertain for sure. But this is what you can expect from them in the foreseeable future. They will remain open. Their website is up. Phone calls and emails are still answered. Parts and frames listed on the website are still available. And importantly, though, the Phoenix will no longer be made, at least until further notice. So he didn't want to rule out the fact that he may, at some point in the future, get back to making the Phoenix. But for right now, that is not on the table. So that's the story. And I wanted to thank Gerald and Kara for their years of contributions to the recumbent world, and wish them all the best. All right, let's jump into the first segment here today, which is with my pal Barney Harle, from the British Human Powered Club. And he had the opportunity to attend the Icarus Cup a few weeks ago, a human-powered flight event. That is just amazing, as you'll see here. Larry, let's have a look. Right, guys, I am here with my pal Barney Harle of the British Human Powered Club. And today, actually, it's going to be the British human-powered flying club. So a little detour from the usual. Barney, welcome back to the Laid Back Bike Report.
Great to see you, Gary. We're here again.
Yep. So, Barney, you attended the Icarus Cup. We have previously talked about it on the show, a competition involving human-powered flight. Really interesting stuff. And I was hoping you could share your experience there. Tell us a little bit about what you saw, the planes that you saw, and maybe some of your ideas about what you saw. So why don't you take it away, Barney? Tell us what you saw there.
It was a fabulous week, Gary. I mean, the spirit of those people, you're getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do weather checks. You're out on the runway, huge team effort, and unique experience. I said there's about 50 to 60 people there this year during that week. There's 50 to 60 million people in the UK. So for every one of us on that runway, there was a million people not doing what we were doing. So it was excellent week. We only had 3 flying aircraft this year, which is a little disappointing. But what we did have this year was a fabulous crop of new young students. So we had 13 people fly, and 10 of those were new students, new to the sport, new to flying. And, that bodes well for us. We've got a new university in Strathclyde who've come forward. They brought a load of people down, and they're midway through constructing a plane. So it was great to be there, great to be part of it, and great to see the flying that was there. It's just a shame that we didn't have a few more aircraft.
Right. Barney, you want to talk a little bit about the venue?
So the venue for last year and this year, we've used Manston International Airport, which is a redundant airfield. It gives us almost 2 miles of runway, super wide, super flat. The issue is it's on a slight rise in Kent, so it catches all the coastal winds. But there's a big hangar space, so we've got loads of space to put the planes together, do repairs when, unfortunately, we always have a little bit of damage. It's inevitable. These craft are made of ultralight materials. So there's a good hangar. On a morning, we can walk those planes out, and we have access all day. Although flying, just due to the vagaries of weather, tends to be early morning, tends to be later evening when the winds and the coastal effect of the wind dies down a little bit. But it's way down southeast of England. It's a 5-hour drive for me. I think it was about a 10-hour drive for the guys from Strathclyde, but they put the effort in and they got there, and that was brilliant to see.
Tell us about the planes that were there.
So Southampton University had their Super Lazarus project, which is a very lightweight plane. Its fuselage is a carbon fibre boom, a carbon fibre main spar, and then a wing that's made of styrofoam and mylar. And below that hangs a very lightweight structure, a carbon pole with a seat on it. And that's surrounded by mylar on little pine dowels. Those students have done a wonderful job this year of bringing forward a new gearbox solution. So they were actually transferring forces through a drive shaft under the seat back to a chain that then drove the propeller, which sits on the main boom. Unfortunately, whilst the solution was wonderful and unique, it probably needed just a little bit more engineering. And towards the end of the week, it caused them some difficulties. Alongside that, we then had 2 Aerocycle planes, Aerocycle 301 and 302, from a chap called John Ehrlich, who is, among other things, an aircraft designer. And he owns those 2 craft, and he kindly lets other people fly them. And he loaned Aerocycle 301 to the 2 university teams, Strathclyde and Southampton, so they could have a bit of a varsity inter-university match. And they were challenging each other over who would get the longest flight, who could get the most flights. And that was great to see. An Aerocycle 302, which is the more sophisticated machine, was then flown by Kit Buchanan and Lewis Rawlinson, who then attempted some of the much harder manoeuvres, the much longer distance flights, 2-3 kilometers of flying, being in the air for 4 or 5 minutes, doing slalom courses, doing spot landings to see who could land nearest the pin. So it was great to see, and all the planes were very well used during the course of the week. And there wasn't an opportunity when they weren't out on the field. As soon as the wind got down to that level, out they went.
Good. All right, let's. I guess my next question would have to do with all these pilots that you were happy to see from various places around Europe. Are these guys all associated with the universities? Are these all engineering students?
So Lewis and Kit, the committee members, are committed to this as a sport. After that, I think the majority of the students were involved in some form of engineering. It attracts, it's the ultimate engineering challenge, this. So it attracts a lot of engineering students from mechanical and aeronautical engineering. And they've joined their student societies. And the students have clubs dedicated to this thing, and along they come as part of that. And they are interested in flying. I know one or two of them have done some flying experiences before as well. But some of them came to it through their fitness, through being triathletes. And Lewis himself is a triathlete, and Rob, one of the Southampton lads, is a triathlete who was recruited for his weight and his build and his power output, with the hope that he will be a pilot of the future.
Tell us what the individual events are that lead up to, I guess, points that would decide a winner. How does that all work, Barney?
So points are awarded. The first point you get is for flight, for how far you can fly. And some of the students were doing only 6, 7, 8 seconds. Others were doing a minute or so. And Lewis and Kit were flying for 3, 4, 5 minutes. So it's about duration of flight. And that's the essence of the Icarus Cup, is getting airborne and flying for some time. After that, they then have notional aerobatic, if you want to call it, competitions. Who can land nearest a flag after 50 meters in flight? Who can fly over 200-meter distance the fastest? Who can do a slalom? And by slalom, they set a straight course on the airfield, and the plane goes through a gate, and it's how many times it crosses that center line before it then leaves the gate 500 meters away. Every year, different people decide to try different events. But there's a formula of points written up, and therefore pilots who are good enough to compete can gain points in those different disciplines. I'd say this year, really, the points disciplines went with Lewis and Kit, and Lewis won. But below that, all the students were then getting points for their duration of flight. And, that is the thing that is the greatest part of this year's competition, was seeing all those students enthusiastically trying to get another 2, 3, 4 seconds of flight, and achieving flights of maybe 10 or 15 seconds one day, and the next day going and flying for 40 or 50 seconds. And actually, 40 or 50 seconds is quite a long time to be up in the air, putting out power and controlling these aircraft, which are very, very light and very hard to give any serious amount of flight input to.
Right, which says a lot about the talent and experience necessary to keep them pointed in the right direction and up in the air. Yeah.
As soon as you put any control mechanism on the flight, you do that by deflecting air. So you're altering a pitch of surface or a rudder, and that acts as an air brake. That instantly causes deceleration, takes a massive amount of your power off, and you find yourself returning to Earth.
So deceleration from what, Barney? Let's put a couple of numbers here. On this 200-meter course, how fast they see how fast they can go. How fast are they going, the best of them?
They're doing around 10 to 15 miles an hour at the top end. These craft they're not fighter pilots. It's 6 minutes to cover a mile, that sort of thing. Last year, myself and Russ were there, and we timed Lewis. He managed to do 1.5 miles in about 6 minutes. So that would be touching on 15 miles an hour.
Nice. And altitude-wise, they don't get that high off the ground. What kind of altitudes are we talking?
Once you clear of the ground, you don't want to put too much effort into getting up. You want to put the effort into getting forwards. So quite often these guys are staying 6, 8 feet above the ground. And, their initial flights might only be 2 or 3 feet above the ground. But once you're clear of the ground, you get that. They get this feeling that once they break gravity, the power input reduces a little bit, and they can then actually settle into flying the thing.
Barney, let's focus in then on a plane or two to get a better sense of what these are all about, how they're built and such. So
here we have Leith Bowman, a student from Southampton University. He's in Aerocycle 301. It's a plane of about a 60-foot wingspan, and as a plane, that weighs only about 60 pounds. So it is really lightweight structure. You can see Leith is sat in the cockpit on a carbon fibre seat and a Kevlar shell. Out on the starboard wing, we've got Ewan from Strathclyde, who's supporting as the plane gets moving. You've got Alina out on the port wing, and then just running underneath the boom at the back is Max. Now, Max has been supporting that boom until Leith started powering up. So if you play the video, Gary, you'll see as it starts to move, the guys start to get him away. Now, here is where Ewan nearly becomes roadkill under my wheels. And if you pause here, you pause the video, you'll see that what's happened is the wind has caused the plane to steers up into the wind. And just as Leith leaves the ground, he then very cleverly manages to bring it back across. But if you play it now, you'll see that he just pops off the ground. There you go, he's celebrating, he's in the air. As soon as he puts the rudder on, he's back on the floor. It's acted as an air brake. Whereas a young fit lad, he's powered through, and there you go, he's got it up off the ground, and he flies for about 6 or 7 seconds there before making a really smooth landing. And at this point, you've got the problem. I'm the only thing with him. I have to stop the video, put the camera in my jacket, and get the trike underneath him to give him support as it comes into land. And there's a fabulous photo that you're going to show next, which is of James Denton, literally as he lands and everybody's running in to catch that plane. And you can see here, James has just landed the plane, and you've got people diving in to try and support it before anything hits the ground. And that's a moment of activity when everybody dashes back in. Having seen the serene beauty of man and machine flying through the air, calm and gliding along, suddenly he's on the ground and everybody's got to get involved to stabilize it and hold it steady. If nobody's holding the plane, the pilot can't get out because it would hit the ground so hard at the rear because it's balanced. So yes, this is the spirit of Icarus, everybody dashing in to catch James at that point.
And Barney, maybe we'll take a second now that we've seen your bike shoes rotating at the bottom third of these videos that we'll be looking at. What was your job there, and how did you cover this? What did you do?
So I'm just there as a member of the BHPFC. I'm interested in the flying. I'm too much of a chunky monkey at 185 pounds and 6'3" to get in these craft. So I'm just part of the crew. On this occasion, I was the only chase cycle. You can see that the 3 guys who launched him were runners. So when I got there, I had to leap off the trike and get hold of the boom so the plane stabilizes. And if there's any wind while it's on the ground, it doesn't try to fly away of its own accord. Usually there's a crew of 2 or 3 or maybe 4 cyclists chasing down the runway to catch him. So yeah, I'm there. I take a few photos, take a few videos, and publish a few articles, talk to people like yourself, Gary. Try and promote this as something to do.
So there were people that were competing and flying. There were also people there kind of trying some new ideas and designs out for the future, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so various people come along and try various things. So Hanya, the ex-chairman of the organisation, brought along some scale models of some potentially supersonic wing craft, and she was flying those under radio control. And then you had Charles Deneen, who is a young flying engineer who previously had been involved with Southampton University, and he brought his new craft, which he's partway through building. He's gone on a different method of construction, and he's looking at foam board, which is a very lightweight Celotex foam covered in paper, and it gives a more rigid wing surface, which should, in theory, be more efficient in flight. So it should give us a better wing. And Charles had also set himself the challenge. These planes are very big. Even his plane was very big, but they're very hard to transport. So he's looked at how he makes a plane that comes apart into segments each of 10 feet in length.
Barney, shall we maybe take a look at some pictures?
Yeah, this is the wing. It's made entirely, almost entirely of foam board, with key points strengthened with plywood cutouts and carbon fibre link tubes. And each of those segments is no longer than 10 feet. So this will fit in a standard hire vehicle. In the UK, we use Ford Transit vans, similar to a U-Haul van in the US. And the idea is that this can be easily dismantled. It's a lot more robust and it's a lot more rigid as the flight surface. So Charles believes this is the future. And it's also very cheap to construct. So if you move on, Gary, you'll see this is Charles holding the tailplane. Incredibly light, a couple of pounds for the whole of that control surface. And that's it. The control surface is then fitted at the bottom of the tailplane. And that carbon boom that links the tailplane to the fuselage cockpit also is only 10 feet long. So the whole thing will compactly pack. This is Charles stood by the cockpit, and that little post by him is where the propeller will be mounted. And that's it looking down into the cockpit. And that's so at the minute, it's a bit of a cheat. He's fitted an electric motor there with an electrically powered propeller just to test out the ground handling of this plane. It's actually that low to the ground when it is going to be in running. So it's about having a fuselage undercarriage that works together. And that's where Charles is trying to refine this proposal at the minute. So he's powering it under electrics, but it was wonderful to see a brand new aircraft, really compact, really lightweight, under 60 foot in wingspan, under 50 pounds in overall weight.
Barney, is there like to drive the propeller from the pedals or the motor, in this case, is there a belt or a chain? How does that work?
So when it's actually constructed with a pedal power, there will be a chain running up beside that carbon post. At the minute, what it's doing is it's a little electric motor mounted on the top of the post, and it's just back to an electric assist pedal battery mounted behind the pilot's seat. But that's the plane there on the runway, and it was doing taxiing experiments.
And to be clear then, so this was never meant to actually fly in this configuration. This is a test device.
This is a test bed of principles, and in particular, how it would handle its time on the ground.
So I'm wondering, like, what are these people trying to achieve? Now, we know how delicate these planes are. I understand it's fun as an engineering project. Is there any practical value to what's going on in the Icarus Cup?
The value is we're giving students an opportunity to do something which, very rare. They're building something themselves from scratch. And they're learning aerodynamics, material science, alongside teamwork, team management of resources. It's a fabulous opportunity for folk to learn. It's also hugely satisfying, Gary. This is man's dream, to be able to fly. This is for people who really are human-powered freaks. This is it. We enjoy using our legs and we do it properly. This is proper human-powered flight.
Right. And so much fun. Well, Barney, thanks for sharing all that with us. Now, let's assume that some people watching this kind of got enthused from what you talked about there with the Icarus Cup. And I know you would love to see this take flight in other parts of the world. We know actually in Japan, they have a vibrant set of folks who are flying human-powered planes there. But other than that, probably not too much around the world that I know of. So how can people find out more about this?
So we have a website, the British Human-Powered Flying Club. You'll find it very easily on Google. Anybody who wants to build a plane, there's actually sets of plans there from planes that have been built and flown in the past. We do have one international competitor from Bordeaux University who flew with us last year. Unfortunately, their plane had an accident earlier this year, so it wasn't in flying state. We're hoping that Dresden University might be coming along next year. So we do have some interest. But yeah, anybody who wants to look it up on the web, it's there. It's a website that's there that, as I say, includes data, shows what's happening, and publicises the Icarus Cup when it occurs. So have a look, see how the competitions run, see how the points run for the prizes, and come along, fly your aircraft.
All right, and I hope you will. So thank you, Barney. Barney has spent the weekend at the World Championships that Honza talked about earlier as an official. So always busy with competition there in the UK. All right, let's move along then to our main segments on off-road bent riding. We're going to start with Hezi Yismach, who was kind enough to interview with me, and he'll talk about what he builds, what he designs, and what he rides. Go ahead, Larry. All right, guys, we are here with my pal Hezi from Israel, who will have some interesting stuff to tell us about the scene there and his ideas about off-roading bents. So, Hezi, welcome to the Laid Back Bike Report.
Hi, great to see you, Gary.
All right, so why don't we start with a little bit about your background there? How did you first encounter recumbent riding? What have you done in the past with recumbents there in Israel?
The first time I saw a recumbent was in a bicycling journal for 30 years, I think, or more. And I dreamt about building, but I couldn't get the right tubes and everything. So after a few years, I bought a Tourisy recumbent from the US and started riding. And after I got to a bicycle factory in Israel, an old bicycle factory that had lugs of old frames, and I thought I could build from this recumbent. So I started building.
What kind of rides and groups did you get yourself involved with in the past?
After I started building, I started noticing other recumbent riders in Israel, and I helped others to build some recumbents, and we got together and started riding a few trips, one around the Galilee Sea, one on the south.
Tell me about your group riding.
The riders got from all around Israel. We got together and rode trips around 30, 40 kilometers. And it was social meetings, and we exchanged a lot of ideas about recumbents, and it was very, very much fun to ride together. This is a special trike that two brothers from Nazareth built and designed and built. It has a special reverse. It's a reverse trike. It has a lever that you take the rear wheel up on a small wheel, and you pedal forward, it goes backwards. Very, very interesting.
All right. So let's move on then to this off-road bent riding that you are so keen on and have been involved in. You started perusing the internet and you found a guy that was doing some off-roading a while back. Tell me about that.
I saw a guy named Richard Ehrlich that built a very interesting off-road recumbent. I got ideas from this and from other builds that I saw there, and it was I started processing it.
Tell me a little bit about why you think it's important to ride off-road, why that's so much more fun, because I guess the other option is street riding. So compare those. Why not ride more in the streets?
In the streets, it's more dangerous in general, but off-roading is in the nature. It's so much making you like free, and I like the suspension.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's start talking about some of the bikes that you have designed and ridden for yourself or other people, and we're going to look at some pictures, Hezi. And let's have you describe your past builds and maybe all the way up to what you're doing now. So let's start here. What do you have there?
This is an off-road that I built at the start. It has a leaf spring of a car that was attached to the frame. The frame was two bicycle frames that were welded together. The seat was a regular plastic chair, and the steering was direct steering, and it was very controllable. But I lost a lot of energy on the leaf spring. This was the frame that I built from. I took the frame from this bike that I built before. This was a push-pull road bike, and then I saw this picture of Tour Easy, and it was like a dream to see it. That it was like I made a lot of long distance trips on regular mountain bike and bikes, and I got a lot of pain all over my body, and I started to think, how can I solve this problem?
All right, and you had some very unusual ideas also. What's this?
This was a pro-owned bike that I built about 25, 30 years ago. It just was experimental. I wanted to know how fast can I go with it. I went 45 kilometers an hour on this one in Haifa. This is the second off-road that I built. It had double suspension, a rear computerized K2 suspension.
Let's take a look at that. Yeah, this is the really interesting part. Tell us a little about this.
It has a computerized valve that takes calculation of the power of the heat from the ground, and it makes the oil go in the shock accordingly. And in front, it has a regular shock. It was very nice to ride. It had a road steering, remote road steering, and 24 gears. The seat could you can tilt the seat, make the height of the seat adjustable with a lever, and it was a very nice bike.
All right, let's move on to this one.
This is with a change steering, front change steering, remote change steering, and at the rear I bought a very unique suspension. It's a Shockster. I bought from Lightning bicycles in the US. It worked somehow, but after I took it off after a while. Okay, I built it for just when you make long distance rides, you a little bit uncomfortable on the seat. So you can, in this mechanism, you can adjust the height of the seat by pushing a lever, and also on uphills, it helps you, like the muscles that you use are a little bit different from when you're in another position. So it's a great for uphill, yeah.
And now I think we're starting to get to more recent builds. Tell us about this bike right here.
Yeah, I got an idea from, I had a small semi-recumbent bike that I bought here in Israel, and from this I thought maybe I can make a long suspension and put a front suspension fork at the rear, and I didn't know if it would work, but it worked.
And let's look at we have a few pictures here as you began. Can you describe the build process of this a little?
Yeah, this is the front of the bike that I made. The idea that I took the pivot from I cut the pivot from a regular mountain bike, a very simple mountain bike from steel, and connected it with, I put other bearings, new bearings inside, not plain ones, and it works very good. You don't lose energy on this bike because you don't lose energy on the suspension at all because the chain doesn't flex and doesn't put energy on there.
Is this the jig that you built to work on it?
Yeah, it's a simple jig from two beams connected together with inside. You can put between the jigs, you can put the parts that hold the frame, and like this, I welded it together.
And Hezi, one of the latest builds that you have, I'm going to share right now. Tell us about this one.
This bike, I made some improvements. I took the steering section of the bike. I made it that I can get out in and out of the bike more easily. So all the steering mechanism with the handlebars is more upwards, and it is very, very comfortable. It has a front suspension Marzuki fork and 140 millimeters rear suspension. Goes very well off-road.
All right, Hezi, so we're going to take a look here at you riding on a trail. And tell me about the experience, why this is so important to you and how much it means to you.
Riding an off-road recumbent is like make me smile in my heart. Every day I want to just get out and ride every day that I can. It just makes me joy. It makes me just feel good inside and outside and everything. It's a very, very... And to build these things and to ride them, it's like a joy. It's very, very good.
Well, Hezi, thank you so much for joining us on the Laid Back Bike Report and sharing your love of off-road bent riding. I have a picture here I think shows that love pretty clearly. Now, if we encounter any of the viewers on the show that turn out that they're as interested and might love this as much as you and might want to talk to you about what you do, how can they best contact you?
My email address is hezi7788@gmail.com.
All right, and we're going to put that in the description below so people can find that easily. Hezi, thank you so much for joining us today. Bye-bye now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So it was great having Hezi to tell his story, and you might have heard in there, he mentioned one of his major inspirations was a gentleman known as Richard Ehrlich. And I've had Richard Ehrlich on my radar for quite some time, an amazing gentleman, and I had the great fortune to be able to interview him about his off-road riding. So, Larry, let's see what Richard has to tell us. Guys, I'm here with Richard Ehrlich, a gentleman from Canada who is going to talk to us about off-road bent riding. He's been around for a long time. I've wanted him on the show for a long time. So, Richard Ehrlich, welcome to Laid Back Bike Report.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us. So, Richard, let's start, if we could, with the story of your recumbent history. So, tell us about your first encounters with recumbents. How did you first find out about them?
Sure. I used to race road bikes and criteriums in the early 80s, and I wrecked my neck doing dentistry, and they basically told me I couldn't ride a bike anymore. I just couldn't crouch forward and hold a tuck position at all. And then one day when I was commuting, this guy rode by on an Easy Racer, and he had plans, and I said, "Whoa, that's cool." And I tried it, and I thought this could actually work for my neck. So that was the start of it. It was a homemade Easy Racer, I guess Tour Easy clone they call it. Built it, but I used mountain bike parts because where I live, there are a lot of good trails and things. And I thought it might be possible to ride it on some of the dirt trails instead of just on the roads. I bought the parts. I scavenged an old bike and carved some tubing and things like that and learned how to braze it. And the brazes kept breaking on some of the joints, so I learned how to weld it. And that did for a little while, but with no suspension, it just beat the heck out of that thing. I realized I could ride a lot more trails than I thought, but I just kept destroying it.
So I hear people bandying about the term adventure racing and gravel grinding. Could you kind of lay out for us what the definitions of those are? How do you see it?
I'll lay out a few things. First of all, technical mountain bike or classic mountain biking is on dedicated mountain bike trails usually. They're twisty, they go up and down hills and things, they have steep ups, steep downs, often mud, sometimes sand, that kind of thing. That's what most mountain bikers ride, is just mountain bike trails. Gravel grinding is basically using the what we call the dirt roads around here, where I am. There are a lot of unpaved roads that have gravel, and they can be quite hard clay. They're almost like pavement. They can be loose gravel, a little bit tricky. It's back roads that aren't paved. Adventure racing is a sport that I do, which combines all kinds of things. There's always a paddling component. There's always a running, trekking component, usually off trail in the woods somewhere with map and compass. It often goes day, night, rain, slow, sleet, hail, whatever. Usually it's in teams, usually co-ed. And the biking is a combination. They usually use bikes to link up the sections, so link up a river here and a forest there or something. So you could be riding on gravel roads, which a lot of them are, cottage roads, backcountry roads. You could be riding on ATV trails. I think in the States you call them quad trails, which can be fine, or they can be horribly muddy, like up to your up above your axle mud. You could be swimming across rivers, pushing your bike, trying to float it across. You can be on some pavement at times. So it's kind of a combination. You have to ride a bit of everything. Some of it is rough mountain biking. Some of it is barely hikeable trails where you end up what we call hike-a-bike, where you've got the bike on your shoulder and you end up crashing through the forest. So it's kind of a crazy sport, but I'm a little visitor here. It works. The Recumbent works surprisingly well in that, or at least it has for me.
Right. I mean, that's pretty clear from some of the videos and pictures I've seen of you, Richard. All right, we're going to talk about each of the bikes that you have ridden, but maybe I can first ask you about what you consider to be what makes a good off-road bent in general.
Well, one thing I found out is that you pretty much need some sort of suspension. It's possible with fat bike tires, you may not. And if you're doing what we call double track, double track are basically forest roads where they could drive a pickup truck or something like that. That kind of thing you may get away without suspension. But I found I really needed rear suspension and front suspension too, but really needed rear suspension because you can't stand up on the pedals like people do. So you get beaten to heck if you don't have a good rear suspension. That was one element. The second element is you can't have any steering interference. If you have hard interference, it's game over. Even if you have heel strike and things like that, you just can't make it around the corners. Some of the corners are very low speed and very tight, and the bike will go around no problem, but not if your steering interferes. And a lot of recumbents for the road just don't have that much flex in their steering. A third thing is you have to be able to get your feet down. So being too high is not feasible. If you're too high and you can't get a leg down, you could end up with some flying off the bike in some pretty bad ways. Big, short wheelbase recumbents with big wheels really go over stuff nicely. They roll over things well. But if you can't get a leg down, you're in trouble. And I thought I had one more element there. The key thing, under-seat steering doesn't work well either. I thought it'd be a nice idea and there'd be nothing in front of you and be nice and safe. But it's a great way to whack your hand on trees and logs and things every time you go around a corner. It's completely unfeasible to have under-seat steering because if your hands are out there where they can get hit, they're just going to get hit a lot. So your hands have to be out in front of you. I found more upright steering works better too. You don't have to be completely upright, but a better off-road bike would have more upright steering and more upright geometry. One thing I found worked the best was the seat back pretty much has to be parallel to your head tube to make the geometry work. It took me a little while to figure that out. But those are the basic elements, I think. You need wide tires, you need good brakes, you need some suspension. Ideally, you need to be low so you can get your feet down. You don't want to be too high, and you can't have steering interference.
Perfect. All right. Well, so your experience has really helped out there in sharing with our audience what's needed. Why don't we start taking a look at the history of the bikes you have ridden, which may help to illustrate what you just talked about.
This was my second off-road bike. I was at a bike show once and I saw a neat bike called the Doppler. It was a long wheelbase aluminum, but it was epoxied and riveted together like aircraft style. And these guys made a really nice light bike. They had an elastomer suspension. I thought, whoa, suspension could be good. So I talked them into making me a long wheelbase suspended off-road version. The elastomer suspension actually didn't work that well. I broke the elastomers all the time, but I had a nice front shock with it. And I raced this in several 24-hour races, local 24-hour mountain bike races on pretty technical mountain bike trails. And I held my own with it, but it had issues. I would crack welds on things. it worked okay, but I wanted to take what I learned from this, and I thought we could do better. I met a guy called Jim Best from Best Bike Works who builds mountain bikes, and he said, I could build you something. And he modified this. This is the same Doppler. It's been modified. If you look, he's put a rear suspension on it now, a proper rear suspension on it. It's still the same frame and same everything else. The painting's different. The suspension was overdriven, though. Even though I'm a light guy, I would completely compress this suspension. So I got talked to him, and he said, well, we can make a whole fresh bike. And he thought he could CNC one. This is it here. This is the Doppler CNC bike. Sorry, this is the Best Bike Works CNC frame. It's a nice aluminum welded piece. He had some problems with it. The heat treating didn't work, and it was way behind schedule. And it had a 20-inch front wheel, but we actually found out that the bigger the front wheel, the better. The little 20-inch front wheel, if you hit a log that's 10 inches, you'll slam to a halt. But if you get a bigger wheel, you can go over. Here it is racing. I'm racing the 24-hour mountain bike race on the version with the bigger wheels. And this worked really well. This was one of my best racing bikes. I damaged it over time, overstressing a few things, but it held up quite well. Here it is. I think I'm riding it in Moab here. I took that one to Moab. We took it to all kinds of famous mountain biking places. We rode a lot of the bigger, tougher trails in Moab, and people were shocked at how well it did, especially because it wasn't tight, twisty turns. It was a lot of big drop-offs and big climbs and things, and it did really well there. This is something else I saw. There's a Canadian company called Doppler made a little short wheelbase bike. It was under-seat steering, small front wheel, and I tried a big fork in it, but it was so laid back. I tried to change the under-seat steering, as I described, because it was a problem, to over-seat steering and a shock. I just couldn't get this thing to ride, though. The front wheel had so much weight. If you hit a log, you'd go flying right over top of it. So I had to modify it. Here it is in the under-seat steering version. Looked like it would work maybe on smooth trails, but not for what I do. You hit even a small log and you're going right off. Here it is again. Worked on the trails okay. I've got the steering a little better there, as you can see. Still got the suspension fork, but I kept wanting to try it at the short wheelbase, but I just couldn't get it to go. Now here it is with a larger front wheel, and this started to work okay. This one wasn't bad on mountain bike trails. This is a pretty good configuration. This is fairly similar to what Azub does now with their Max bikes. Again, I was pretty high though, and it was a little awkward to being that high off the ground. And oddly enough, it still wasn't as maneuverable as the long wheelbase. I thought it would be, and in some ways it worked better, but there was interference and things, and if you hit stuff, that heavily loaded front wheel just wouldn't float over them. So I ended up going back to this bike. John Morcillo built this thing for me. I had to beg him to make it, but once he did, the guy's a genius. He built this rolling work of art. This replaced my aluminum one, and full carbon. The front wheel is a 26. The rear was a 29, which I really wanted because the bigger wheel just rolls over things better. It's not too heavy for what it is, and the thing is beautiful. It's had its issues too. I've broken the carbon a couple of times, and John had to reinforce it, and I had to reinforce it. But it was prototype number 01. I don't know how many John's made now. Here it is in a 36-hour adventure race, all loaded up for 36 hours of racing, day and night. You wouldn't believe the mud I took this thing through there. But again, I did better than my teammates because they got sore butts and they got beat up. This is on a recent race called the Storm Race, which we won our category in. That was a tough one. A lot of tough climbs and tricky mountain biking there. One thing about long wheelbase, you can go over a lot of stuff. You can see me going over this here. There's actually a video of me jumping over this. And the funny thing is when I come off the bump, I fly about 3 feet off the seat. Like I'm basically standing vertically on the bike, but I can absorb great big bumps on that. The long wheelbase is great for that. The short wheelbase would have killed me here. So that's the advantage of the long wheelbase bike. Here we are in Sedona riding some of the most famous mountain bike trails there. We did everything. I didn't do the extreme trails there, but I did what they call their expert level trails. And we did, I don't race it at a very high level on mountain bike trails, but we punch well above our weight. And it was fine. I have studded tires, 3-inch studded tires to commute in winter as well. I ride it in ice. The only thing I won't ride in is big, deep, thick snow, but that's where you need a fat bike. And Jim does make a fat bike. This is coming down some switchbacks on a mountain bike race one day. The bike handled it beautifully. This was at the end of the Mohican 100 mountain bike trail, a mountain bike race. It's a 100-mile mountain bike race in the U.S., and that's the race director. He'd never seen a recumbent do it, let alone finish it. I finished mid-pack, I guess, but he was just impressed we could finish it all because this is a dedicated mountain bike race, and it's a long, tough one. This is just finishing the Storm Adventure race. This was a shorter one-day race where I actually came first overall on this one. I've won my category multiple times on this bike, but this time I won the whole thing. And a lot of it was tough biking, but it wasn't super technical. It was just muddy and difficult. And that's the older Best Bike Works one. And it was a champ, went through that no problem. I did very well on that one. Now, this is the Omega changed up a little bit. This is how I ride it currently for gravel biking. Gravel biking is getting more popular, and I don't really need my full long wheelbase bike for that. The long wheelbase bikes work fine, but I haven't got the right tires on them. So these are dedicated, supple, fairly wide gravel bike tires, and the bike rides quite nicely on that. If I was to go on a trip somewhere where I was mostly riding on roads or gravel trails, that's the bike I would take. The long wheelbase bikes, they're great, they're comfortable. If I was touring across the country, I'm not really sure what I would use. But if it was really rough terrain, that's where the Morsilio Kodiak bike does really well. The best bike with the long wheelbase, definitely better for rough terrain. But for moderate terrain, the short wheelbase has worked well for me. So I think that's most of the bikes I've had. I may have had another oddball one here and there, but that's about it.
All right, so different tools for different jobs apparently is the way to go.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the ultimate off-road bent. I know you've had some discussions with people in the industry. Obviously, John Rosiglio, you did. And tell us about your thoughts about if you were to have someone build what you would consider maybe the perfect off-roader. What would you consider, and who have you talked to?
Well, I've talked to Carver Bikes, who makes a nice titanium bike. I've talked to John, obviously. There's not a lot more players in the market, really. It's a very niche market. I was always sorry that Rand's never made a rear suspension one, because they could have done it, but they didn't. But I think the ultimate bike, there have been some nice developments in transmission and stuff like that. And I have a feeling that a pinion drive would be very nice. If you get a pinion drive on one of these, the front all-in-one transmission, and a Gates belt rather than a chain, that would be bomber for going through really messy, nasty stuff. And would probably last you till, I don't know, outlive the rider from what I can tell. I think they even have a version of the Pinion now that has a motor as well. So it's not that hard to motorize if someone wanted to do that. So that would be in terms of drivetrain, it's a little heavier, but it would be absolutely bomb-proof. And I would love to see someone like Carver make a rear suspension version. I've also thought that maybe Honza could make something really nice with Azub, because he's got the suspension dialed for his short wheelbase bikes. And their short wheelbase bikes are great rough touring bikes again, but for real off-roading, you kind of need a long wheelbase. But something like that would be a really cool thing to see too. I mean, I think the Morsilio's Thunderbolt Kodiak is pretty close. I think it's under-designed for what I'm using it for. The rear suspension could have a little more mechanical advantage, and that's where I would change the design a little bit. And the key thing, I think, is being able to use wider and wider tires on these things, because so many bikes are designed for narrow tires. It's just nice to have forward thinking where you could there's no real reason not to have a wide frame that could take a wide tire, even if you want to run narrow ones in it. So it'd be great if you could put bigger 3-inch tires, maybe even fat bike tires on something to make it versatile. So I think that's what sort of the ultimate would be, something like that. I still would say a long wheelbase rear suspension bike is the way to go, but it needs a fair bit of rear suspension travel. And I would be interested to see either roll-off or pinion drives as opposed to the derailleur drives I've been using. I mean, the derailleur drives are efficient, but mountain biking is hard on them. I've broken several derailleurs in races just by banging them on logs. We were nearly at winning a race once when I knocked the derailleur right off and the whole race was done for us.
Do you have some suggestions of bikes that are out there for someone maybe even getting started, just existing bikes who may not necessarily be known as an off-road recumbent, but you think with a little modification might work? What suggestions would you have for that?
Well, I mean, of course, a lot of the Azub bikes are available with mountain bike tires, and I have not ridden one of them yet. I think my little Omega is close to one of the Azub Max bikes, but they are high. A short wheelbase, if you're very tall, you could reach the ground, but I'm only 5'8", and for me, two 29-inch wheels on a short wheelbase would be difficult. It'd be fine for cruising on dirt roads and gravel and that kind of thing. It'd be great. For full off-road, not so sure. But for gravel, of course, the Hezi bikes would be fantastic. I feel like the Schlitter Freestyle, if it could hold a wide enough gravel tire, would be a really nice bike too. And I also like the Metabike Mystique. I think if you put gravel tires on that, that looks like a very nice, comfortable, stable configuration. I think for gravel riding and some lighter off-road, that'd be a really nice bike too. I've seen the Carver bikes. They don't have rear suspension, but they're well-made, robust, long wheelbase bikes, and they have very flexible arrangements for the wheel size, which I was talking about. You can even change the dropout so you can have wider axles and things on the back. So they could handle a lot of different wheel types. Certainly for gravel riding, they'd be fantastic. If Carver develops a rear suspension, it'll be the only one, almost one of the only ones out there.
So how do you see e-assist fitting into off-road bent riding? How do you foresee that working out?
Well, I think it's got huge potential because we're often riding up really, really steep, short little climbs. And that's where an extra kick up the short climbs would be so useful. I have to take the uphills. Sometimes we have very tight, twisty uphills over lots of logs and things. And that's where my bike does not do as well because the front wheel is not very heavy loaded. And you just need to carry momentum up the hill. If you lose your momentum, I could wash out, I could stall and get in trouble. And a regular mountain bike is faster than me up there. But if there was a little extra oomph to keep the speed so you had some momentum up there, I think these things would climb so much better. I'm actually intrigued in trying it someday. The only challenge is some of the remote wilderness areas we go to don't allow motorized vehicles. And I'm not sure if that would apply to e-bikes or not. But I think Carver could easily accommodate that with that pinion MGU. It stands for motor gear unit. It has both the gears and the motor. The Carver would work great with that. It would also bring more weight to the front of the bike, which is useful because if you had a rear hub motor, it's good. But these long wheelbase bikes are already light in the front. And so by the time you put a heavy hub in the back, you're not really helping things much. A little more weight in the front would be helpful. On a short wheelbase, you could do either. But the front wheel is already heavy loaded, so a rear hub drive would be fine. And I think there's an enormous amount of potential for that. I think it would make the whole off-road thing much more accessible for everybody, as long as the suspension could handle the extra weight of the bike. The brakes can handle it no problem, but I've always had problems with the suspension being a little under-designed just because the Recumbent puts more stress on the suspension than a regular mountain bike because you can't stand up on your pedals.
Richard, anything you'd like to say to finish up here? Anything that you think we might have missed?
Well, the thing I'd like to say is that I've been able to go lots and lots of places on these off-road bikes that I never thought I'd be able to do. I don't have to race it at a high level to enjoy it. I've toured in Sedona, I've toured in Moab, I've toured in Vermont, I've toured all kinds of famous mountain bike places just at a touring level, and the Recumbent works great. It's a comfortable, safe way to ride these things. I've enjoyed it, and there's really no reason the Recumbent couldn't do that. I'm saddened there aren't more options available for people because I think it's a big segment of the market that could be missed. You really don't need a mountain bike for some of this stuff. For the highest level mountain bike racing, yes, but most of us aren't the highest level mountain bike racers. We just want to go out and ride and enjoy ourselves. And I've had thousands of hours and tens of thousands of kilometers of really good mountain biking on Recumbents. Even though they're a bit of a unicorn, they shouldn't be. There should be. I wish there were more options for people because a lot of people would enjoy it, I think.
I think that's going to encourage a lot of people to give it a try. And that's what this is all about for me, and I'm guessing for you as well. Richard, if folks want to contact you and maybe ask you some questions, share more of your experience with them, how can they best do that?
They can just email me. My email is simple. It's richard@ehrlich.ca. You can post a link to that if you want. And they can just email me about that. I'm happy to talk. And of course, I'm always on Bent Rider. People can contact me there.
Good. And we'll put your contact information in the description below as well. So with that, Richard Ehrlich, thank you so much for joining us on the Laid Back Bike Report. We wish you well, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Richard Ehrlich, who just made all kinds of references to Honza and Hezi. So we're going to start there. Honza, I know, has to get going. So I'm going to start with Honza so we can do that. Honza, I guess tell me whatever you want to say. I'm interested in your thoughts on off-roading recumbents in general, and then what you think is the best kind of bike to do that with.
Okay, so I've done some mountain biking, not that serious as Richard did. You know, we did a lot of rough roads, like jeep tracks and stuff like this in Himalayas, in Albania, in Israel as well. I crossed the Negev desert with a recumbent with my friend Shlomi from Israel, and so I started with the Max, which is the dual 26-inch wheel recumbent short wheelbase ASUP Max. After about 5 years, when I thought this is the best mountain bike recumbent or mountain recumbent bike I can get, I realized what I think Richard was talking about, that this bike is way too high for riding in off-road. So I had a difficult time to reach the ground, usually in very latest moments when you are dancing. I call it dancing on stones somewhere, and then in a very slow speed you are about to fall down. Then I couldn't reach the ground with my foot enough fast. So I started to ride the Mini, which is dual 20-inch wheels. I realized that for most of the roads we did, which means jeep tracks or very good hard packed single trails, something like that, I am okay with 20-inch wheels only. Good suspension, of course, front and back, and I always thought about the long wheelbase, but it has never happened. I never had a chance to ride one, which would be suitable for off-road riding. Honestly, I have been riding bikes way less than 15 years ago because of all the family stuff and work and so on. So I'm afraid I would have a very hard time riding some serious off-road riding. But yeah, the long wheelbase seems to be the way to go. It's obviously it is a proven concept by Richard. So yeah, there are some sketches, some concepts here around, let's say, but as it was mentioned, off-road riding on a recumbent is such a niche. So it doesn't really make sense to spend an effort and money on a project like this, saying from the business point of view of ASIP.
That's what I was going to ask you, Honza, because Richard did make a point, although this may not be his strong suit in terms of the business aspect, about how he thought this could widen greatly and really be a great option for many people, which, I'm a bit skeptical. I do see recumbents as a niche, and then, every time we go down the road of specialization, we're going to call another niche, and it does get to be a market that might be so small that nobody can make money doing it. So you have sketches. Maybe you'll do a prototype at some point, I suppose. But yeah, I appreciate your thoughts on it, Hans. Any last things? I'm going to let you go because I know how busy you are. Anything else?
It's okay. But what I think is, what I really need to mention is that there are off-road trikes or trikes that are capable of at least gravel biking, some Jeep track riding, some very bad roads riding. So and that's growing, I guess, especially with the electric motors. And some of the trikes out there that are like, we have the Tyfly X, HP has the Enduro. There are some Stein trikes available with good suspension. All of the trikes of this style have good suspension front and back. So then you can go. And definitely gravel riding is very comfortable, and it brings new horizons. So I don't think a two-wheel recumbents would be a thing for off-road, like a big thing from the business point of view, maybe with the motor, but the trikes are getting bigger and people are seeing it and wanted to try it. So yeah, they're what I see as an opportunity for us to grow the recumbent image in mountain biking, at least.
All right.
Something.
Yeah, great. All right. So, and I wanted to talk to Trey and Larry briefly about at least the gravel part of this. So, guys, Trey, I know you've been interested in gravel bent riding for a while. Can you tell me about your thoughts about gravel bent riding? I think we're talking more about trikes here, but what are your ideas about this? What do you hope to be able to do? First, I'd hope you'd be, there you go. Sorry.
So I'm thinking, I've been looking at this for a while, and I've tried various trikes and bikes and stuff on light gravel. We have a huge gravel group here, and that seems to be the most popular thing riding. Road riding used to be the thing. Now everybody's into gravel. So when you go to these events, there's absolutely no recumbents, and when you show up with a trike, they're like, "What are you doing here?" Because a trike by itself, like my wife and I, if we wanted to go participate in a gravel ride, we're always going to be behind because a trike is inherently slower, period. There's just no argument with that. So then we start trying to figure out ways, how can we keep up with the group or even do better? So then you start thinking about e-trikes, and that's a cool thing. But I also like two-wheel bits. So I've been looking at various things. I've got a Rand's T-Rex that I've tried in its stock form. And what Richard said to me is pretty much true. If you've seen the T-Rex, it's a very short wheelbase with 20-inch tires. And when it gets into gravel, it's almost, well, it's fine until the gravel is anything less than perfect. If you get into big rocks or loose gravel or something, the front end just gets real twitchy. So then I started thinking what could be next. And I looked at the long wheelbase and all those things. But like you said, there's really no long wheelbases out there with rear suspension, and it would just beat you to death. I mean, it's just a fact. So it's I was actually laughing while I was watching Richard because I've made some notes, and he mentioned the pinion drive. So I started thinking, if we were going to build something, what would we do? So I was thinking a medium frame that's kind of low to the ground, 26-inch wheel with a pinion drive. That actually their MGU, their motor pinion drive, would, with overseat steering, would be, I think it'd be almost perfect, but it's got, and I'm the same way Richard is. I'm 5'8", so I'm low to the ground. I'm not, I can't, like on the Max, it's too tall for me, and I can't get my feet down unless I lean forward and, make an effort to get that foot on the ground. So, that's why I was just, it's almost like I read his mind and I didn't know what he was going to say. But so that's what I would like to see. And I haven't ruled out the 20-inch because I've watched a tons of Honza's videos. I've seen your stuff where you're riding through a lot of terrain that you seem like you should be able to do. So the 20-inch wheel bike has the advantage. It's low to the ground, and it seems like it's a bit, I haven't looked at the specs, but it seems like it's a little bit longer than the T-Rex. So you get less twitchy steering, you're low to the ground. And now we got a cure is either be in good enough shape to ride gravel and keep up with folks or figure out a way to put a motor on there. So Yeah.
So a work in progress for you guys. It's been a while. I know you've been thinking about this. Maybe, yeah. Well, when you come to a conclusion about what you're going to do, Trey, you'll let us know, and we'll share that with all our viewers. I'm sure they'll want to know. And I want to finish up with Larry, who is no stranger to gravel riding, nor is he a stranger to competition as a triathlete. So, Larry, sometimes when you're doing the biking part of the triathlon, you're on gravel. Tell us about your experience with your aero on gravel.
Well, my hands are tied because according to the USA triathlon rules, I've got to be on a trike. I can't be on a bike to follow their para-triathlete impairment rules. But I'd like to change the rules, modified somehow, even to let me do a 2-wheel bike and do some Xterra type mountain bike racing rather than gravel racing. But I'm such a small minority. I'm the only one that ever shows up at these gravel races on a recumbent, so the chances of changing the rules are going to be slight. But I'd really like to give the 2-wheel a try sometime.
Okay, and that's mostly what we've talked about here. So, all right, guys, any final thoughts before we move on? I thought that's a great segment here, and I think whether the market is large or not, I think the interest is there, and I find it interesting. So we will keep following this.
I just need to get
Trey?
Honza to build me a medium length, 26-inch wheel, pinion drive, 2-wheel bike. You can do that, right?
He just laughs kind of under his breath. You know what that means. That's right.
I can't assemble it. I can organize it maybe.
All right. Well, we'll put you two in touch then soon, and we'll see what happens there. So, guys, thank you very much. I think we'll move on to the next segment here. One last thing before we go. I did get a question via email from our pal Ron Thompson, the guy who created the G4 bike, and he asked, where does one draw the line and say this terrain is just too rugged and requires an upright bike? So I think we pretty much covered that. Even Richard said there is a point. What did he call it? The advanced adventure riding, where even he can't handle that with the bikes he has. But I'm going to say from what we've heard today that the vast majority of riding off-road and adventure riding can be done with some of the bikes that we've seen or talked about today, Ron. But I think there is a limit. I'm not sure we can actually draw that line. But when it gets just too tough and the obstacles are too large, I think there's going to be a problem, and you just would have to ride an upright bike. That's my opinion anyway. So thank you for submitting the question, Ron. Good to talk to you. And let's move on now to our last segment, which is the Trident Trike Half Pint review that I was able to put together over the last number of weeks with my grandkids. It's a small trike. It's for kids. It's relatively inexpensive. You're going to hear all about that right now. So Larry, let's check it out. Guys, we are here to do a review today of a small little trike by Trident Trikes called the Half Pint. Now, I needed a couple of reviewers that would be appropriate for this particular trike, some small people, and it just so happened I was very fortunate to have run into a couple of small people here. Guys, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Serena, and this is my grandfather.
Okay, Serena, and who are you, sir?
And my name is Abel.
And she already said that I'm your grandfather.
Yeah,
So we're going to go ahead and, what are we going to talk about, Abel?
The Trident Half Pint.
All right, exactly right. So Serena actually started the process, so let's take a look at that right now.
My grandpa just got a review trike from Trident Trikes. Let's open it and see what's inside. Let's cut this box open and get started.
Okay, and that was great, Serena. So after the box arrived, we unboxed it and took a look at all the parts. So Abel had the chance to do the next part. Abel, what did you do next?
I put it together. Let's take a look at it right now. Let's start by getting the proper tools. A 5mm wrench and a crescent wrench. Now we're going to assemble the front wheels to the frame. I'm going to ask my grandpa to help me with this part.
Hello, Abel.
Now let's prepare to put the handlebars on. We'll finish adjusting the handlebars when we're done. Now it's time to assemble the back wheel. Now let's put the seat on this thing. Now it's time to add the boom. Now it's time to assemble the chains. Now it's time to put the finishing touches on this bike. I think I'll need a pedal wrench. Now time to put the flag on.
Great. So, guys, we had the trike received. We put it together, as you just saw, and now it was time to get on the trike and start riding it around so we could evaluate it. So we're going to start with Serena, who actually took the half pint through the neighborhood here on the streets, and that sort of street riding is really what she's going to be able to talk about. So we're going to go through a couple of parts of this evaluation. Serena, let's start with comfort. So how comfortable was it to ride the half pint?
Well, the seat, I think that the shape of it is really clever. How it's like the curve, it makes it so much more comfy, but it could use padding. And the pedals, because people my age are not designed for this bike, it was less comfortable than if I would pedal a bigger bike, but that's just because of my age.
Right. I was just going to ask, what does that mean? So you might be just a little bit on the high end of the sizing for this trike, would you say?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Now, let's get on to the steering and control of the trike. So you went slow, you went fast, you went up some hills and down some hills. So tell us a little bit about how the steering was for you.
I think the controlling was pretty average.
All right. Well, let's get to the brakes then. Because that's really what you're talking about, Serena. So when you felt like you needed to stop, we did a couple of stop signs and areas where you might have felt like you're going a little too fast. How did the brakes work?
The brakes were good, but you can't stop fast. Like, you can't just hold it down and expect to stop. It can do that, but I do not recommend it. You need to slow down before stopping.
Right. So it sounded almost like you're saying the brakes don't work very well. They work almost too well in some cases. Is that what you mean? If you really pull those brakes hard, what happens?
It will launch you in the air if you are light enough.
Right. So you didn't get launched into the air, but it will stop you like on any trike, a tadpole trike. You have to be careful with the brakes, don't you? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So how about your overall impressions? If you were a little smaller, say, would you think this would be a good trike for your family to buy you?
So I would give it a solid 8 out of 10 if I was like 6.
Right. So if that trike fits you more perfectly, you would think it'd be a really good trike. Okay. Thanks, Serena. Okay. Well, let's go on to Abel. Now, Abel and I took the half pint to a local park, and we had some fun there. It's a park that has a nice bike trail on it, didn't it, Abel?
Yep.
And what else did that park have that was kind of unusual?
It had a lake, and it had a covered bridge.
That's exactly right. So that's right, a covered bridge as well. So the key here is that you had a chance to ride on a paved trail, which is a little different than Serena. And there was a bit of unpaved area that led up to the covered bridge as well, which you had a chance to go up on. So let's start there. So if it's not paved and it's kind of uneven, like, remember when you tried to go up onto the covered bridge and off of it? Yeah. So what was that like?
It was really hard. There wasn't enough friction. And they were just sliding, and I just couldn't do it.
So, on the part of the gravel trail that led up to the bridge, it was very steep, and you lost traction on that rear wheel a bit, didn't you?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you did. Okay. So that's great. Abel, let's now move on to the trail, the paved trail, because you rode on that really for good distance. You got to ride it around the park, up a hill, up around to where there was a beautiful lake, and you rode all the way around that lake. So with that in mind, I want to ask you some of the same questions I asked Serena, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. So let's start with the comfort. So you got a chance to ride the trike for about an hour, I think, there. What did you think about the comfort?
I think it's really comfortable without the padding, which I am really surprised of.
Okay, and why do you think that is?
Probably because the shape and
the shape of
the seat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and One of the other things we talk about with trikes is not only the shape of the seat, but how much recline there is, right? So a seat can be sitting up pretty well or laid way back. This one doesn't have a whole lot of adjustment. It has a little bit of adjustment back there, but for you, we kind of needed to get it back pretty far so that you could fit, and you fit fine on it. Let's now jump onto the steering. So you were all over that trail, and you checked out the steering at slow speed and high speed. Tell us about your experience with the steering, Abel.
I think the steering is really sensitive. And also I think that it can be really good for speed, but it's not too good for going on like sharp turns and stuff.
Sharp turns at higher speeds, you mean?
Yeah.
What happens if you go a sharp turn and you're going a little too fast?
You could wear the wheel.
The other thing to talk about here is the actual speed. And Abel, I know you're a speed demon, dude. So tell me, does it go pretty fast and is it fun?
Yes, it goes a lot more faster than you really think.
So just looking at the trike, you may not think it's that fast, but?
Yeah, it's really fast.
Okay. And do you like to go fast?
Yes.
Really fast?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
All right, good. So when you pressed hard on the brakes, did they stop you quickly?
Yes.
With Serena, we talked about the sizing of this trike. It was a little bit too small for her. It is an adjustable trike. You can put that little spring and sprocket. If you pull the boom, it will adjust the chain up to a point. And we had that boom almost all the way out for Abel, but it seemed to fit you pretty fine. So, Abel, let me ask you what the most fun part of your ride was.
Maybe going down the lake or around the lake. When I was going really fast, going around the lake.
Abel, since you fit pretty nicely, I guess the only thing we'd need to try is someone smaller. Lady, come sit on the trike. That's just for you. Come and sit. Come and sit. All right, so we have Lainey here with us right now, who's going to test out that trike. Go ahead, sweetie. Can you sit in it? Turn and sit. See if it fits you. All right, so yeah, it could be a little too big for a 3-year-old. Wait, are you 3?
Yeah. It's actually 2 little.
It can be a little bit too big if you're 3, but I think by the time she's 4 or 5, it will fit just fine. All the way up to maybe 9 or 10, the Serena size, right? So let's finish up here, guys, with comparisons. So you have ridden another kind of kids trike. It's the KMX trike from England. Actually, we got it from the guys at Trike. You've ridden that for a while. Try to compare the half pint to the KMX, Serena.
I would rather ride the KMX because it has padding and it's the right size for me and I'm more used to it.
All right. And Abel, you have ridden those KMX trikes a lot in the driveway, in the street, and a couple of places. Tell me about how you would compare that to the half pint.
I think it's a lot more comfortable. I think it's easier to weak and it has more size difference. It's like 11, it's like around 12 for like 5 or something. But if you're looking for speed, I think you'll rather pick the half pint.
Yeah. And the one thing that the kids haven't talked about because they're really not involved with it is the price. The half pint is $600. So it is, for the money, a really nice little trike. And is that it for you, Abel? Anything else you'd like to add?
Also, I think I'll give the half pint a solid 7.5 out of 10.
Okay, you're right. You said 8 out of 10.
Yep.
You said 7.5 out of 10.
Yep.
It's pretty close. Kind of that evaluation comes close to being the same. So, children, thank you so much for joining us on the Laid Back Bike Report. Bye.
Sweet.
All All right. I wanted to thank Tom Flohr at Trident Trikes for loaning us that half pint for review. He's always a stand-up guy and willing to help us out. So thank you, Tom, and my grandkids, Serena, Abel, and Lainey. Thanks for helping Papa out on that last segment. So with that, let's polish it off here. I want to remind you guys that if you have pictures or accomplishments that you'd like to share on the show, please send them to laidbackbikereport@gmail.com, and we'll put them in our viewer submissions section. We'd love to see what you guys have. Now, on to our sponsors, who include TerraCycle. Are you tired of feeling like your bent was made for someone else? I know I'm not. No, of course I am. TerraCycle's handlebars and stems allow you to customize your ride so you can feel like the superstar you are, even if you ride like a turtle. Trail Side Trikes. If you find yourself in Florida near the Withlacoochee Trail, check out Andrew's shop and amazing crew. And TerraTrike Greenspeed, the best in leisure performance, adventure touring, electric, and portability. Wherever your adventure leads, TerraTrike will take you there. And Greenspeed, where Ian Sims designs bring performance through science and engineering. And Layback Cycles, the top USA dealer for TerraTrike and the premier source for Catrike Ice and Greenspeed. We give you the freedom to ride. And Bicycle Man, where you can find new and used recumbent trikes and bikes. We're located in Alfred Station, New York, and have over 100 bents in stock and ready to try. So why wait? Come ride, then decide. And Azub, in addition to titanium suspension, another technological gem brought to you by Azub, is an optional folding mechanism. It's not only easy to operate, but works great and looks fantastic. And Recumbent PDX, Catrike's West Coast Megastore. Schedule your test ride on Trikes with pedal assist electric from both Bosch and Bafang, roll-off and schlumpf component groups, and adaptive builds. Experience the joy of Catrike. And Connecticut Yankee Peddler. We feature multiple brands of trikes, including electric assist models. Test rides in Southern Iowa hospitality are always available at our megastore in Chariton. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up with a couple announcements, mostly revolving around next month, where we, as we talked about earlier, will be attending CycleCon. We will do our next show the weekend after CycleCon, which will be September 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And we will have that panel review with our panelists who had attended CycleCon, giving you their impressions, their highlights, and what we saw that stood out to us. So that's always a fun show for us. I hope you guys will like to do that. And attend CycleCon if you haven't thought about it. This is a good time to do so. It's in Xenia, Ohio, September 20th to 22nd. And you can find out all the details on their website, cycle-con.com. So, join us there. I do want you to stop by our booth if you can and say hi to us. We would love to see you guys there. Now, how can you support the Laid Back Bike Report? You can like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and don't forget to click that little white eye up there, which will take you to the laidbackbikereport.com website, on which you can find lots more information about our past shows, our future shows, and become a Patreon member for as little as $1 a month. Also, as Honza mentioned earlier, we do have an audio podcast that we make from the show. Many people don't know about that. You can find that on whatever your favorite podcast app is. So if you can't watch us, or you would rather ride while you're listening to the show, just look for the Laid Back Bike Report podcast, and we would appreciate that as well. All right, let me get the crew to come back on. There we go. Larry and Trey, thank you so much for helping me out today. This was kind of a show. We had to dance through a few things together, but I think we got through it. So I appreciate, fellas. Thanks again. We'll see you both in person next month in Xenia. Look forward to that. So thank you to these guys, and most of all, thank you all for watching. So until our next webcast, from all of us here at the Laid Back Bike Report, so long, bent riders.